Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Crimson Kitchen. This meeting is being recorded, so for those folks who could not attend, we'll post this on our webpage shortly. And I want to hand it over to Chef Akeisha.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Today, we are going to be doing an awesome stir fry. Again, my name is Akeisha Hayde, the executive chef for residential dining at Harvard. And one of the things that I like to ask everyone to do, if you don't mind, if you are able to be on video, it would be awesome. As I don't like talking to a blank screen because all I see is these little icons and I don't know who's behind. So if you are able to make yourself available so I can actually see you, that would be pretty awesome, especially since we've all been stuck inside. Like I said, it'll be nice to see some humans. So that would be great. All right. So as I start today, I just wanted to talk you guys through a few simple things when we talk about stir fries and why sometimes your stir fry may not come out the way you want it to, and a few little mistakes that we make. So let's start off with whether we're using chicken or shrimp or tofu. It doesn't matter what protein we're using, or if you just want to use vegetables. The key is to make sure you have everything ready to go. When you're doing a stir fry, it's not the time to be running, going in the refrigerator looking for ingredients, because things cook very quickly and you want to keep your pan moving and the ingredients going one after the other. That's one. Two, if you're going to be using chicken, fish, or any other proteins, you want to make sure you have them defrosted and seasoned beforehand. If you're going to be using frozen items, what happens once you add it to the hot pan? It starts releasing liquid, and then a lot of times you're like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. So you start throwing things off, you add more in, and then it becomes more of a stew than a stir fry. All right, so we always want to make sure everything is defrosted and things are ready to go. The other thing we want to talk about, I was going to use a wok today, but I figured most people don't have woks, so I'm going to use a regular pot so you understand that it's the same thing, but it's more about how we keep our stove temperature and the way we add our ingredients and the steps we add the ingredients in, okay? So think about it logically. We're going to add the things that take the longest to cook first, and the things that cooks the fastest to the end. The other key thing that we want to talk about when we're doing a stir fry is the pan that you use, you want it to be a heavy bottom, but something that can conduct heat evenly, quickly, and hot, okay? We don't want stewing, so we don't want when you add ingredients and you have to wait 5 minutes for your pan to get hot again, and then you start creating liquid, and then everything just becomes kind of not really a stir fry, okay? So the pan that I'm using is basically just a heavy bottom, you call it anodized steel nonstick pan, okay? So there's no need to buy any fancy pans, but what you do need to do, nonstick and extra hot. I don't recommend cast iron for stir frying, only because you can't really move it unless you have some really good arms. So other than that, I wouldn't recommend cast iron, and nothing too thin that will cause everything to burn as soon as you put it in the pan. All right, so while I'm chatting with you, I'm going to put my stove on a medium heat, because what I want to do is, as I start adding my ingredients, I really want this to stir fry and get color and be vibrant. So I want to walk you through the ingredients that I'm using today. When I do stir fries, I have two choices. I can use frozen stir fry vegetables, or I can use fresh vegetables. Today I'm using fresh. Usually if I'm home and it's a weekday, I use frozen. I get a big bag of the stir fry frozen vegetables, and I use it straight from frozen. I do not defrost it, okay? So that's the only exception. We're gonna talk about it, how that works, because by the time you add your chicken and it's brown, you can add the veggies and it cooks very quickly, and it's from its frozen state. So that's the only time I use the frozen item, straight frozen. Today I am going to be using chicken tenders, and here I have my chicken tenders that I have seasoned with a little bit of olive oil, salt, pepper, 5-spice seasoning, and a little bit of fresh garlic, okay? And that's it for the chicken. For vegetables, I'm going to be using some shiitake mushrooms. I have some sugar snap peas, carrots, broccoli, and red peppers. And as you can see, all of my ingredients have different colors because when we put everything into a stir fry, we want it to be colorful and vibrant, and we really want to make sure it looks good as well as it tastes good. So while my pan is heating up, the other thing I want to go through with you guys is something that's a simple foundation for Chinese cooking, and it's called GGS, garlic, ginger, and scallions. The key to using your GGS is you do not want to burn it, okay? So the reason I did not add the oil to my pot is because I want my pot to be hot, and then I add my oil and my GGS so that the GGS doesn't burn. If I go straight in there with hot oil and then add the GGS in, it will burn, okay? So that's the reason. From there, I'm gonna add my chicken. Once my chicken is stir-fried and get some color, then we're gonna start building with the vegetables. Once we're finished with the vegetables, we're gonna then thicken the sauce, and this is a choice. Sometimes, depending on what you're serving your stir-fry with, you might want it to have that liquid at the end, or you may want to tighten it up with the cornstarch if you want to create more of a sauce, if you're going to be putting it on a platter. If you're going to be serving it over rice, I say don't thicken it, but if you're going to be serving it as its own dish, then I would say use the cornstarch because it just presents better and you don't have liquid pooling on the bottom of your plate. All right, so we're going to get started. If you guys have questions, feel free, put it in the chat, and I'll be more than happy to answer while I go along, because once I start cooking, we're going to be out of here in no time. You're going to be very surprised how quick this happens because everything is already prepped, okay? So for starters, like I said, my pan is getting nice and hot, and it's pretty good to go right now. And from here, I'm going to just add my oil. Personally, I don't like stir frying with olive oil because it has a lower smoke point, but I would suggest using regular vegetable oil. Peanut oil is perfect. If you want to use vegetable, canola oil, whatever oil you choose to is fine. If you want to use olive oil, it's okay, but you just have to pay quick attention to it because it does burn quickly and it does change the flavor slightly, okay? So I'm adding my oil. And then to that, I'm gonna add my GGS. So I'm gonna go in with my ginger, my garlic, and my scallions. And when you use this, these three seasonings, I mean, it changes everything. If you're gonna make a stir fry, if you're gonna do fried rice, if you're not starting with this, you're not gonna end with the great product, okay? So it's three simple things, but it changes everything. And it gives you a really authentic flavor. So as you can see, my veggies are cooking, but it's not taking on color, and that's what I want, okay? To this now, I'm gonna add my chicken. And the other thing when you're doing stir fries, you do not want to overcrowd your pan, okay? If you have to do it in 2 batches, do it in 2 batches, but it's not the time to try to do too much at a time, because that's when we also create liquid in the pan, all right? So as you can see, my chicken is starting to get a little cooked. And all I'm gonna do right now, since I mixed it up a little bit, is kind of let everything hang out without mixing again for a minute. Because I also want it to take on a little bit of color, all right? So the chicken might take about a minute or two. Today I'm using chicken tenders. You can use chicken breast, you can use chicken thighs, whichever you prefer. I like chicken tenders because it cooks quickly, it cooks evenly, but it's also just much softer when you use in a stir fry. So it's still your choice. Salmon is great in a stir fry, believe it or not. It holds together really well. You just have to take it out when right before you add the vegetables and add it back into the oven. All right, so as you can see.
Chef, if you're using tofu,
What's that?
If you're using tofu, do you need to do anything to the tofu? Do you need to put it in olive oil or anything?
I would suggest, yep. See, so you should treat tofu the same way you treat meat, which means that whatever flavor you put in it is what flavor you'll get at the end. If you do it very plain, it'll taste very plain. If you season it up really well in the beginning, when you start cooking with it, it's gonna take on the flavor. So yes, I would suggest olive oil, salt, pepper, garlic, and the spice seasoning, same as you would do with the chicken. And if you can do it overnight, it's even better. If you can do it at least an hour before, it's great. So the reason why you don't see any liquid in my pan is because one, my stove is hot, my pan is hot, but also I don't have a lot of chicken in there trying to compete for space, okay? And I use the analogy, this is the one time you want that social distancing in your pan, okay? So keep that in mind when you're trying to achieve color on your meat. All right? So we're not quite there in terms of cook, because we want our chicken to be at least 3/4 of the way cooked before we start adding the vegetables. All right? But as you can see, it's taking on some nice color, and it's looking pretty already. And at no time when you make a stir fry, you want to cover the pan, okay? So if you think something isn't cooking quickly, do not cover the pan. Once you cover the pan, you're going to create that nice vacuum in there, and then you're going to start creating moisture, which is then a stew, okay? It no longer becomes a stir fry.
Chef, how do you know that it's 3/4 of the way cooked without cutting it open to look at it?
If you, first of all, I use by poking the chicken so I can tell, but I would suggest if you don't know, because chicken is such an item that you don't want to play with, I would suggest cutting it open. But I can usually tell by touching, by the bounce back. The more springy, the less cooked, the less springy, the more cooked.
Could you show us in the pan? Give me a second to get you there, but show us what you mean by springy.
Sure. So if you look in the pan right now, when you look at this piece of chicken that I'm going to touch, hold on, I just want to isolate it so you can see. When I touch it, it's very bouncy. See, kind of like boing, 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 boing. But then if I look at this smaller piece here, when I touch it, it really doesn't push back as much. It's a little less springy. So I know this one meat is completely raw on the inside. And this one is almost done because it's a much smaller piece. And if I was to cut into that, if you can see here, it's still pretty raw in the middle, right?
So does that mean it's a good idea to make sure you're cutting the pieces of chicken to be pretty uniform?
Yes, as evenly as possible. But like I said, don't make it more complicated than it needs to be, but try and get your cuts as close to each other as possible. So yeah. So I'm almost there with my chicken. And this is when the magic happens, because like I said, from this point on, it's gonna go pretty quickly, okay? So the next ingredient I'm gonna add to this, mushrooms, I like, especially shiitake, they gain a lot of flavor and meatiness when you add it to your dishes. If I was to add this and not cook it at all, it would be good. But if I add it to my chicken so that itself can brown a little, it would add even more flavor. Because shiitakes definitely take on a much more meaty and nutty flavor profile. So what happens is as I add the mushrooms in, it's also going to take off all that fond or crust on the bottom of the pan. And then that's going to flavor the mushrooms, and the mushrooms are going to start letting out some liquid, and that's going to create a little bit of sauce in the bottom of the pan. But in all it's doing is building flavor. All right. So it's almost like having two sets of meat in the pan right now. The mushrooms and the chicken. Okay. And you see how clean the bottom of my pan is, and that's because the mushrooms have already, look at that, eaten up all that goodness, as you can see. All right. So now that that's happened, the next thing I'm going to add to this is my carrots, okay? Because carrots do take a little while. This is going to be awesome. So while this is going, I want to talk to you guys about sauce. So in this recipe, you have a few options. I created a simple sauce with the seasonings that go in the pan, which is the 5 spice, the GGS, a little bit of soy sauce, and then you thicken with cornstarch. You can do that. The second option you have, you can use a teriyaki sauce, which is already thickened, it's already flavored, so you don't need to add much seasoning. The other one that I personally like, it's a Thai chili sauce, which I tend to find if you like things like a little bit more sweet and a little bit more spicy, it is really good, okay? So you can use that, and this, because it's already thick, you don't need to add cornstarch or anything else, okay? So carrots are in. The next thing I'm going to add here is my snow peas. And I like my veggies to have a little bit of a bite to it. So I want to make sure I don't overcook that too much, okay? Once my peas start looking like that bright green, I'm going to add the next ingredient and we're going to keep going. Because when I add the soy sauce, it's going to also create a little bit of moisture for me. I have some broccoli and peppers that I'm also going to add. That's going to go right in. And as you can see, we have created no liquid. All we're doing is stir frying, okay? And this is the whole point of the stir fry. High heat, quick cook, no fuss. I'm gonna add my jalapenos. Jalapenos are optional. I like spice, so I add it. If you also want to add the flavor of the jalapeno without the heat, just take the seeds out, okay? And if you like more heat, leave the seeds in. And the last thing I have here are some shelled edamame. Okay, and now we're gonna start creating whichever sauce we would like. So to this, I'm gonna first add my soy sauce. And all I'm using is some light soy sauce, okay?
Chef, if you use frozen stir fry vegetables, will there be liquid? And if so, how do you avoid the stew effect in that situation?
If you use the frozen vegetables and you get a little bit of liquid, that's where you combat it at the end with a little cornstarch slurry. However, if your pan is hot enough, you won't have as much liquid. Now, if your pan is like a medium heat and you add the vegetables, it's going to cool the pan down very quickly and create a lot of moisture. If your pan is screeching hot and you add the frozen vegetables, from the time you start stirring it, the liquid will start to evaporate. So frozen vegetables just means extra hot pan. Okay. As you guys can see how nicely this is coming. And I always say, so my broccoli looks like it's not cooked, but from the residual heat that's in this pan is going to continue to cook the broccoli even when I take it off. So I don't want to overcook my broccoli while it's in the pan, okay? So today I'm feeling fancy. So I am actually, because I don't have much moisture in the bottom of my pan, as you can see, I don't need to add the cornstarch, but I am going to use the chili sauce, okay?
Are you maintaining the same high temperature as you continue to add each item? You're not adjusting your stove temperature?
Yes. And now that I have my sauce in and I don't want that to burn, now I'm going to take my heat off. And that's it.
And the one thing I do like adding to my stir fries at the end, it's a little bit of fresh scallions again. So I just took some out from my first set. So finish it with that. And then a little bit of cilantro as well. The other thing that goes great if you have, it's some Thai basil. Will really bring this alive if you have that as well. Okay. And as you can see, guys, this is my stir fry. I'm gonna plate that so you can see it. But as you can see, the bottom of the pan here is nice and clean. The vegetables are nice and bright. And my meat is all cooked. I wish you were here to smell this. And I'm gonna put some of that in the bowl so you can see what it looks like.
So just to confirm, you turned the heat off once you were putting in the last bits of your sauce. Is that right?
Yep, as soon as I put the sauce in, I mixed it up and then took it off. Yes. Because the sauce has sugar in it, so I don't want it to burn. So that's why I took off the heat. If it was just plain soy sauce, you could let it go a little bit longer. So you're trying to see. This is a beautiful stir fry. Can you see that?
We can, it's beautiful. So there's a question about what's the difference between Thai basil and regular basil.
Oh, very different flavor profile. The obvious would be the regular basil is usually used in Italian cooking, and the Thai basil is for Thai cooking. It's not to say you can't use them interchangeably, but the flavor profiles are very different. The Thai basil complements things that's more stir fry, coconut milk, things like that. And then you definitely go more with the tomatoes and garlic and things like that for the other regular basil or Italian basil. So that's the biggest difference.
All right, chef, beautiful dish. What, if you have the other questions, you can put them in the chat.
Oh my gosh, no questions? Was it that boring? Was that what it is? Really?
So talk a little bit about if I wanted to do more Thai style versus Chinese, what are the differences in the seasonings that I might use?
So if I was doing a Thai, first of all, I would definitely use carrots and onions, but the flavor base might have been more lemongrass, Thai basil, a little bit of, instead of the garlic, ginger, and scallions, I would have left out the ginger and just used the scallions and the garlic, and then build it from there. So Chinese is definitely the three, which is the garlic, ginger, and scallions. And then the Thai, you would have the other flavor profiles.
And a question, why did you put the broccoli in at the end? Does it?
Because I don't like gray broccoli.
So that keeps it crisp and bright?
So it keeps, so there's two ways you can keep it crisp. One is obviously adding it to the end where it has less cook time, so it has a little bit more crunch and it stays bright. Or you can blanch it, which is boil water, drop the broccoli in for about 15 seconds, pull it out, cold water, and reserve it. So then that way you can add it in earlier, but it will still get soft, but it'll stay a little bit brighter green.
And
but if I'm being lazy when I come home in the afternoon, I'm not doing all of that.
And if you eat mushrooms, is there anything else that has the same effect as mushrooms?
In terms of flavor profiles? Krista, repeat that question.
In terms of cleaning the pot and taking up all that flavor.
Uh-huh.
Can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead. What's the question?
In terms of cleaning up the pot and taking up all the flavor, is there anything besides mushrooms that does that same thing?
Yeah, any of the vegetables. Once you start adding the vegetables, the same thing would happen. So what I had added the carrots, that would happen. But the difference is the carrots won't absorb the flavor like the mushrooms. So mushrooms are like sponges. Anything, it's like tofu, and mushrooms. Anything you put that in, it just kind of soaks it up. So it just helps to build more flavor. It doesn't mean that it won't happen with the other vegetables. Just you get more bang for your buck by doing it with the mushrooms.
All right, terrific. So a question came in. I did not see you add salt. Please tell us how the stir fry gets the salt taste.
So the soy sauce that I use is a light soy sauce. It's not a low sodium. It's not in any way lower in sodium. So for me, I don't need to add a lot of salt. Plus I had a little bit of salt when I seasoned my chicken. And then the soy sauce would be where my sauce is. Plus I had the Thai red chili sauce. So they all have flavors and seasonings in it. So there's no need for me to add additional salt. If I was not adding soy sauce, then I would add the salt.
Question came in, could you review using frozen veggies again? So in the order that you cook, how would you use frozen veggies?
How would I add the veggies?
Yeah, the frozen veggies.
So okay, so then I would do the chicken. So I would do the chicken exactly the same way, GGS for olive oil or your regular oil, GGS. Put the chicken in, cook that up really nicely. The difference with the frozen vegetables, it's one time, right? Because everything is in the package. You're not adding multiple things. So you want to cook your chicken most of the way, and then once you add those vegetables in, it's a quick toss in, get that moisture out, and you're good to go. So it's a one serve, and then you're going to garnish it with a little bit of the scallions and cilantro at the end, or Thai basil if you so choose. And then you will create your sauce with the cornstarch or use the thickened sauce already.
So you have talked about a slurry of cornstarch. Can you explain what you mean?
Oh, okay. So a slurry of cornstarch is literally a little bit of cornstarch with some water, nothing else, and cold water, not warm water. So cold water, and I just mix the cornstarch and water. And what that does is, while my pan is screeching hot and you have all that liquid, from the time you add the cornstarch, within a second or two, it'll start creating a very nice thick sauce for you. So you'll get that kind, I call it, when you go out and you get that kung pao chicken or orange chicken, it has that sticky glaze. That's the consistency you get when you add the cornstarch.
Great. All right, and then there's a question about shrimp. Because shrimp cook so quickly, would you still add it first, or would you instead add it later after some of the other vegetables?
So I do a double with the shrimp. What I do is I add it in the pan with the GGS, get it nice and brown, and then I pull it out, add my vegetables in, and then I dump it back in the pan. You could do it all the way, but then I find the shrimp get very chewy, especially if you're doing it in a pot and not a wok, right? Because we're trying to control the temperatures and make sure everything is cooked, and the chances of overcooking shrimp is very high, especially if you're using small shrimp. The second thing is I always say anything 21, 25s and above for shrimp stir fry, because too small, then they just shrink up really quickly and you end up with these little things. But then if you use the 21, 25s and up, you tend to get a nicer looking stir fry and they don't shrink as much. And 21, 25s is the amount of shrimp per pound. The higher the number, the smaller the shrimp. So if you want bigger shrimp, you buy shrimp with the smaller numbers. So 15, 16, 21, 25s tend to be the conventional home bigger shrimp. If you go 31, 40s, you get those little things and then they cook up and they're just like really little. And then anything higher than that is bird feed.
All right. And how about eggs? Do you stir fry with eggs at all?
I do. But usually if I'm doing fried rice, which I would say is the main time I would use it. But if you're doing it in a stir fry, you can. A lot of people use it as their protein sauce, so it's definitely possible. And you would add it in closer to, I would say, the middle of the cooking. So you do the veggies first, and as it creates the liquid, you'll push the veggies to the side, crack your egg in the middle, start scrambling that, and then incorporate the vegetables back into it.
All right. I am not seeing, oh, here's another question.
Yep.
You have a measurement for the soy sauce and the chili sauce. Roughly how much do you add?
It depends really on how much vegetables, okay? So for what I use, I would say I use about 3.5 tablespoons of the soy sauce. And for chili sauce, I would say that was about a 1/4 cup. And you can use more or less depending. Some people, if you wanted to have that sticky, glossy color, then you add more. But if you want it to be just a hint of flavor, then you add less. But I would say definitely taste is your best way to figure out if you want more or less. Don't be afraid to taste.
Can you use a non-stick skillet, like a 10 or 12-inch skillet, non-stick skillet?
So the only thing I would say is when you use the skillet, just make sure that your vegetables and everything is proportioned to your pan, right? So you don't want to use a 9-inch, 10-inch pan, but then you have a mound of vegetables and a mound of chicken, and then you add the chicken in and you're like, why is it not getting brown? And then you put vegetables in it, and then you create the stew, and then it starts bubbling over the pot, and then you're trying to catch a place on fire. So we don't want that. So that's why I use a pan with high sides, right? To avoid all of that. But you can just make sure it's smaller portions. So that way you have the ability to get everything with nice color and be able to move it around easily without tossing it out the pot.
And a question, let me see if I get this right. So if you're adding rice in your stir fry, would you add more soy sauce and chili sauce?
So are you talking about cooked rice? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
So yes. So I like to what I call, so this is one of my favorite things to do. My kids are like, Mommy, how you cook so fast? I'm like, because I love leftovers. So yesterday I actually had some rice that I cooked, white rice with sazon, so it's kind of orange looking. But today, because I did stir fry, that's going to go alongside it. If you guys weren't looking, it was going to go in it. And it was going to be stir fried rice with chicken. Because then it becomes a whole new meal. And once I add the soy sauce, no one knows it was orange rice before. So yes, I would definitely add rice because I think it just makes it a complete meal. And then if you have any moisture in your pan, you also get the rice to absorb all of that. So it's even more tasty. So rice is a definite yes.
Fantastic.
Quinoa, if you're not someone that does a lot of grains, farro and quinoa also works great the same way rice would work. So you boil or cook your quinoa, you have that cold and sitting in the refrigerator. You can use it for a salad, but then if you make a stir fry at the end, you can just toss it in with the salad, with the stir fry. It's awesome. Farro I like especially because the grains are a little bit bigger and it has a nuttiness to it, so it really makes it feel like, oh my gosh, I'm having a restaurant quality meal at home. So farro is also really great. And just follow the cooking instructions on the container.
And
how much rice or quinoa? That would be according to how much you want. So when I say it's all about your taste, I like my stuff with heavy vegetables. So I would always say 1/3 grain to 2/3 vegetables. If you have a big family to feed and you're trying to stretch it, then do 50-50. And if it's you alone, then you can adjust it to suit.
fantastic. Chef, thank you so much.
And thank you guys for not being all behind the screens. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you, so I can see a few people.
All right, take care.
Thank you.